There is a moment that most people never experience. The moment when you realize that the home you live in, the mortgage you are paying, the utility bills that arrive every month, the contractors you call when something breaks, the building materials store you drive to on weekends, none of it was inevitable. None of it was the only way. It was one way, a way that was built around extracting money from you at every possible point in the process of simply having somewhere to live. There is another way. It has been practiced for 10,000 years. It requires no bank loan, no mortgage, no licensed contractor, no lumber yard, no insulation supplier, no HVAC installer, no utility contract. It requires dirt, straw, sand, water, and your hands. The home built from these four ingredients costs nothing in materials if you have access to your own land. It is built by the people who will live in it, using skills that any motivated person can learn in a weekend. It produces walls that are stronger, more durable, and more thermally comfortable than anything a conventional contractor will build for you at 50 times the cost. And in most jurisdictions in the developed world, you cannot get a permit to build one. Not because it fails, because it succeeds at something the entire housing industry needs you to keep paying for. The most dangerous idea in construction. Here is the idea that the housing industry, the mortgage industry, and the construction materials supply chain all have a direct financial interest in you never taking seriously. You do not need them. Not for the walls, not for the structure, not for the insulation, not for the thermal regulation of the interior. The earth beneath your feet already contains everything required to build a home that will outlast any mortgage term by centuries, maintain comfortable temperatures without mechanical assistance, and require no ongoing purchase of materials, energy, or professional services to remain standing and habitable. The material is called cob. It is a mixture of clay-bearing subsoil, sand, straw, and water. Combined in the right proportions and applied correctly, it produces walls of extraordinary strength, density, and thermal mass. Walls that have stood for 700 years in the wet climate of Devon, England. Walls that have stood for 500 years in the desert heat of Yemen. Walls that have housed families through centuries of weather, war, and economic upheaval without requiring a single visit from a licensed contractor. The threat this material represents to the housing industry is not technical, it is economic. A family that builds their own home from materials dug from their own land has permanently exited the financial ecosystem that the construction industry, the mortgage industry, and the energy industry all depend on them remaining inside. They owe no bank for their walls. They pay no utility company to heat them. They call no contractor when a wall needs repair because they built it and they know how to fix it. They are, in the most literal sense, free from the system that most people in the developed world spend their entire working lives paying into. That freedom is exactly what the system cannot afford to make easy for you to achieve. What your hands can actually build. The construction process for a cob home begins with what is already on your land. Most soils contain clay. Not all soils have the right clay content for cob construction, but a simple jar test, filling a jar with soil and water, shaking it, and observing how the layers settle, tells you within minutes whether your soil has sufficient clay content to work with. If it does, your primary structural material is already there, waiting to be dug. To that subsoil-bearing clay, you add sand, which provides compressive strength and prevents excessive shrinkage cracking as the wall dries. You add straw, which provides tensile strength, binding the mixture together and preventing the wall from crumbling under lateral stress. You add water to bring the mixture to a workable consistency. The traditional mixing method is the most accessible imaginable. You pile the materials on a tarp or a hard surface, you add water, you walk on it, turning the pile with your feet, working the materials together until the mixture is uniform and cohesive. No machinery, no mixer, no power tools, feet and time. The mixed cob is then applied to the wall by hand, packed firmly into the previous course and shaped into the wall form. Experienced cob builders develop a rhythm of mixing, applying, and shaping that can produce several square meters of wall per day with a small team. An owner-builder working with family and friends can raise the walls of a modest home in a season of weekend work. What those walls look like when finished is unlike anything conventional construction produces. Cob walls are thick, typically 300 to 600 millimeters, and because they are shaped entirely by hand, they can take any form the builder imagines. Curved walls that flow around the interior space, built-in shelving that emerges from the wall itself, window seats with deep sills that collect winter light, arched doorways, sculpted surfaces, and organic, living quality that no sheet of drywall has ever possessed. The walls are the structure, the insulation, the thermal mass, and the finished surface simultaneously. In conventional construction, each of those functions requires separate materials, separate contractors, and separate budget lines. In cob construction, they are all one thing, dug from the ground and shaped by hand. The financial liberation nobody wants to sell you. Let us be specific about what building with cob actually means for your financial life, because the numbers are the part the housing industry most needs you to never calculate. The average American home costs between $150,000 and $400,000 to build using conventional construction methods. That cost is financed through a 30-year mortgage at interest rates that mean the total amount paid, principal plus interest, is typically 1.5 to 2 times the original loan amount. A $200,000 home financed over 30 years at a typical interest rate costs $350,000 to $400,000 by the time the final payment is made. On top of that mortgage payment, the average American household spends $2,200 per year on energy. Over 30 years, that is another $66,000. Add property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance of mechanical systems, and the periodic replacement of appliances and systems that wear out, and the true lifetime cost of a conventional home is staggering. Now, consider the alternative. An owner-built cob home sourcing materials from the land costs between $3,000 and $30,000 in total, depending on size and finish level, with most of that cost going to the roof, windows, doors, plumbing, and electrical systems, rather than the walls themselves. There is no mortgage on a $10,000 home. There is no interest payment. The walls cost nothing because the earth provided them. The energy bills for a well-designed cob home in a temperate climate approach zero for heating and cooling because the thermal mass of the walls does the work that a furnace and air conditioner do in a conventional home. Some cob homeowners document annual heating costs below $100. Many document zero. The difference between these two financial paths over a lifetime is not marginal. It is the difference between spending 30 years paying a bank for the right to live somewhere and spending one season building a home that you own completely and that costs almost nothing to maintain. The bank cannot give you a mortgage on a home that costs $10,000 to build because there is no profitable loan to structure. The contractor cannot charge you for labor you provided yourself. The material supplier cannot sell you what you dug from your own ground. The utility company cannot bill you for energy you are not consuming. Every single one of those industries has a direct financial interest in you never seriously considering this option, and every single one of them shapes, in one way or another, the regulatory environment that makes it difficult for you to pursue it. The 700-year track record they cannot explain away. The housing industry's standard response to unconventional construction is safety. Building codes exist to protect people from dangerous buildings. Standards ensure that structures perform reliably. Certification ensures that materials do what they claim to do. These are legitimate concerns. Badly built homes are dangerous. Standards and testing serve real purposes. But consider what the historical record of cob construction actually demonstrates. In Devon, England, 50,000 cob buildings are standing today. The oldest have been continuously occupied for over 700 years, not maintained by preservation organizations, not held together by restoration grants, lived in, mortgaged, passed between generations, housing families through 7 centuries of English weather, which is among the most relentlessly damp and frost-prone climates in the world. No conventionally built home from the same period is still standing as a residence. The wood frame homes of the 1300s are gone. The materials have rotted, burned, or been demolished. The cob homes are still there. The safety argument against cob construction is not supported by the evidence. A material that has housed people continuously for 7 centuries in challenging climates is not an experimental technology requiring careful regulatory oversight before it can be trusted. It is a proven technology that the regulatory system simply has no framework to accommodate, because the framework was built around materials that manufacturers needed to sell. What the permit process actually protects. When you apply for a permit to construct a cob home in most American jurisdictions, here's what happens. The building official looks at your application and sees a wall material that is not listed in the prescriptive code tables. There is no R-value table for cob walls. There is no span table for cob construction. There is no section of the International Residential Code that tells an inspector what a compliant cob wall looks like. This doesn't mean cob walls are unsafe. It means the code was not written with cob walls in mind. The people who wrote the code were thinking about wood frame construction, concrete masonry, and steel framing, because those are the materials that the construction industry was producing and selling when the codes were developed. To get a cob home permitted in most American jurisdictions, you need to hire a structural engineer to design and certify your specific wall assembly. You need to conduct soil tests to characterize your material. You need to engage in a variance process that can take months and cost thousands of professional fees before a single wall is built. Those barriers don't exist to protect you from a dangerous material. They exist because the regulatory system was built around materials that needed regulatory frameworks to enter the market, and cob never needed a regulatory framework because it predates regulation by several thousand years. The practical effect is that the most accessible, most affordable, and most time-tested construction material in human history is the hardest one to get a permit for in the most regulated construction market in the world. That outcome serves the industries that shaped the regulatory environment. It does not serve you. The knowledge that cannot be taken back. The skills required to build a cob home are learnable. They are not engineering skills or contractor skills. They are the same skills that humans have been passing from parent to child for 10,000 years. How to identify suitable soil, how to mix the material to the right consistency, how to apply it in lifts that bond correctly, how to protect the base from moisture and the top from rain. Those skills are documented in books, taught in workshops, demonstrated in online videos, and practiced by a growing community of natural builders around the world who have chosen to exit the conventional housing system and build their own shelter from what the earth provides. The community exists, the knowledge exists, the materials exist on virtually every piece of land on earth. The only thing that stands between you and a home that costs nothing in materials and frees you permanently from mortgage payments and energy bills is a regulatory system that was built by people who needed you to remain dependent. You were not born needing a mortgage. You were not born needing a utility contract. You were not born needing a licensed contractor to have somewhere to live. You were born on a planet that provides everything required to build durable, comfortable, beautiful shelter from materials that cost nothing. The system convinced you otherwise. It took 10,000 years of human building knowledge and replaced it with a process that requires a bank loan, a contractor, a materials supplier, an energy company, and 30 years of monthly payments just to have a roof over your head. That process was never inevitable. It was never the only way. It was just the most profitable way for everyone except the person living in the house. Now, you know there is another way. It has been waiting under your feet the entire time.